why is it that people are prepared to pay that kind of price for works of art? So we can talk about that form of exchange value too. And then, of course, there's the even more fraught issue of aesthetic value, and whether that can be described, let alone measured. And how, you know, these different measures, exchange value, use value, aesthetic value, might interrelate. Is there a connection between them, or are they free-floating values? Thompson, in this book I mentioned, which is interesting in certain ways, thought in the end, his conclusion is that value is created in the arts through, in contemporary art, through the combination of what he calls branded artists, such as Hirst, coming together with branded galleries with firm institutional reputations, and branded museums, such as Tate. And through that combination of branding, what you get is a kind of inculcation of trust in buyers, and to some extent, perhaps to a lesser extent, in members of the public. And that feeds through into expense and worth. That's, you know, a particular view, perhaps a view which is more cynical than many would like to take, but it's one a place to start, perhaps. And then, well, this panel is not just about value, but about who decides value. Is it curators, gallerists, critics, buyers, publicists? Well, that's something we'll discuss right now. And I'd like to start, I think, with Sarah Crowles, who did this extraordinary project in which she interviewed these gallerists from a wide variety of galleries. I mean, you read them. What did you find out about what they thought about value?
I mean, what I gathered, I think, from doing it, but then this is only my take, but that a lot of it was, value was quite subjective. So almost every single person I spoke to in the book would say, who I show is who I like. And I had to like the work they show, which is probably kind of standard, and that work kind of moves, as well as moving through the ground chain, work kind of moves higher and higher up the art scale by, because, you know, there's subjectivities, but then there's like a consensus of subjectivities. So I guess that's the thing that most people agree on, how they created value for the market.
I mean, a couple of things struck me. I mean, one was that even the most overtly commercial of your gallerists, all of them said, well, it's not only about commerce, there's something else going on here. It's about taste, it's about aesthetic value too. So no one was prepared to say it's merely a business, which I thought was interesting.
No, what they did do is they all alluded that others thought that way, but they didn't think that way.
Yes, I suppose so.
So, but then, because I think that was almost my suspicion at the beginning, but when I started off I didn't really know anything about it. So I was trying to ask really open-ended questions just to see what came out, and that was one of the common things that ran through all of them.
Anyone? I mean, maybe the galleries here would like to.
Did you find that the galleries reveal more than they should?
Oh, I'd say it.
Julia, our social origin is that the acoustics in this room are rubbish. So whilst your voice is back there, I think you're quite projecting.
Yeah, thanks very much for that. It's important to know. It is a large room, there are a lot of people in it. We're going to have to speak up. Yeah.
My question to Sarah was, did you find that galleries were very revealing, or were they more cagey?
Firstly, it depended on the gallerist, and it depended, but a lot of people were a lot more open than I originally expected them to be, just for the reason that when I first went to approach these people, I didn't say I'm going to be writing a book now, and I went up to a lot of people, and because it was just the intention, the interview started as part of my practice, and it was pretty much, you know, I would like to ask you some questions about your gallery, about the art world, and it was really trying to get an understanding for myself as a student. So it was actually, a lot of people were open to do that, and they were really, really nice, really, really relaxed. And a lot of people spoke quite openly, I thought, on some of the subjects. I mean, some were a little more closed, it was almost like the more commercial the galleries, the less artists you got in a way. I think it was about a bit of protection and a bit guarded. But the book only turned into a book when we were trying to raise money for QR. That's possibly why.
Can I just speed this up a bit? Because I think, you know, the model that you started with, Julian, about the gallery that, you know, you have the branded artist and the branded gallery. This is an historical model that develops between 1910 and 1913. And, you know, with Kahnweiler making a deal with Flechtheim and Tannenbaum to create a very specific, limited number of branded artists, and then, you know, dealing in a very specific way, which became a kind of standard way for contemporary art dealers to convince their new audience of their connoisseurship, of their knowledge, of the value of the work that they were selling, because they were very near the artist, because they were in the street, because they saw them every day, because they knew them, because they knew the poetic and philosophical and dramatic context in which they were working and all of that sort of thing. And that became a kind of neat little capitalist model, a new one, but it started to accrue to it certain things like the interest of Carl Einstein that Kahnweiler assimilated to try and get Einstein's writing to help him to get works of Derain, Braque, Picasso, Léger into the museums, because the museums would revalidate the thing, etc., etc., etc. And that has grown exponentially, and now we have a huge, you know, hyper-complex capitalist model, which you know still has the bare bones of that underneath it, but includes, you know, massive amounts of money being spent in order to validate a collection which has cost a lot of money, you know, money going into a museum to help to validate it, and the validation of the museum increases that of the collection's fame increases that of the museum. We all know of these things. I mean, this is Sunday colour supplement kind of knowledge, to pretend in a sense that we're working in an area of you know, let's start from the baseline and get a collusion of subjectivities, I think is a bit naive. I mean, you know, on the one hand, we know we have all that, and we know that the chap doesn't go with £2.5 million in his pocket to Frieze and say, shall I have, you know, Cheeky Chappie from the 90s, or the last remaining Leonardo drawing with my £2.5 million? I mean, of course, there's a very, very complex business behind that. You know, I think that if we're going to speak of values, I think we have to, and they're values that we want to question each other about, then I think we have to find where we locate the questions that are still asked within all of that, and not pretend that it's not existing and it's not complex.
Yeah, I mean, I underline that slightly, and then question also it slightly. Kahnweiler, Vollard, all of these sorts of...
Vollard was very different in his
yeah, sure. I mean, but the difference perhaps being that Vollard was willing to sit down for the portrait done for him by Cézanne. I can't imagine Charles Saatchi sitting down for a portrait. It was more intimate. There was a kind of an intimacy. It's a very small scale, obviously in comparison to today's art business. But Christian Huygens back in the 17th century with Rembrandt sitting for his portrait. There's merchandise, of course, from the 17th century up to Vollard and Kahnweiler. But, you know, Picasso had some considerable control. He was holding these paintings back from Kahnweiler. It was very much a case of him scrounging for what he could get.